Well, let's get started. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sarah Olivieri. I'm a #1 international best-selling author, a nonprofit business strategy consultant, a former executive director, and creator of the Impact Method. And in today's micro training, we're going to talk about get out of your values box. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this now is I've been thinking a lot, of course, about racism in our country. And if you know me, you know that I'm that person who's sitting here going, it's great to speak out. That's an important change moment. But how do we implement success and improvement day in and day out through our everyday work in our organizations? And it happens to turn out that the same things that we need to do to eliminate, reduce, and hopefully eliminate racism in our organizations and in our work with the world are also things that make our organizations better and stronger and move forward. So I want to teach you today a little toe in the water about one of the things you can do to implement systemic anti-racism into your organization. Because when I think about, things like protests and speaking out, those are things that prime the pump. But if you don't have a plumbing system to keep the water flowing, priming the pump doesn't really make a big difference. So today we're going to be talking about putting in place some of the groundwork for the systems and processes that are going to allow you to make good on your upset and speaking out around racism. So I'd love to know in the chat, and if you're watching the recording, put it in the comments. Did you send out some sort of statement from your organization this week? Or are you working on it? Yes. So did you write a public statement, or are you still working on it? You're planning to. I'd love to see some yeses. Awesome. Keep putting them in there, and I'm going to move on to the first slide. Internally to staff, great. You haven't yet. Well, this will hopefully help you know if you're still deciding. This is going to help you decide what to do. And if you're nervous about what do we say and where do we go from there, this training isn't going to help you that much to decide what to say, but it will help you know where you're planning to go, which will hopefully empower you to know what to say. Oh, it was disastrous. Okay, so we're going to talk about values and principles, and I'm going to loop around to stuff about racism throughout this micro training. And I am happy to stick around after for those of you who are live on the call, and I'll answer your questions and we can get super vulnerable. That part will not be a part of the recording. So if you're watching the recording, please let us know if you want to join these trainings live so that you don't miss out. So many organizations have been told to build core values. And this might be a moment I heard a lot of language as how can we make good on our core values or be value aligned. But here's the thing about values. I mean, I used to help organizations develop core values, but we always ran into problems. Somehow core values, people ended up restating their mission, and it was confusing. And at the end of the day, we might have had some meaningful core values, but they didn't lead us to our next step. And values are really important for us as individuals because it helps us know who we are. But as organizations, as multiple people coming together, they can be a little too fuzzy. We don't usually give out the slide deck, but the recording will be available on YouTube. So the thing about organizations is we need something a little more specific, something a little more that people can dig their hands into if we want it to be actionable. I also have to tell you, and I'll just touch on this lightly here, is I actually spent probably almost the past year, I got worried that core values had the potential to perpetuate racism in organizations rather than as a tool to eliminate it. And the truth is, many people can have differing values and still come to the same agreed upon decisions about how to take action. And that's what we need in our organizations. So rather than have a fuzzy middle, whenever we're bringing people together, we want clarity. So we want to pull out the belief from the principles. And I've just pulled a few definitions that I think are helpful. So a belief on this end of the spectrum is an acceptance that a statement is true or that something exists. Or it might be trust, faith, or confidence in someone or something. Whereas a principle, and I thought this was a very interesting definition, I only pulled this definition today, but a fundamental truth or proposition that serves as the foundation for a system of belief or particularly behavior or for a chain of reasoning. So this is what we need in our organizations, right? We need the foundation for a system of how we're going to act and how we're going to make decisions. That starts to be really useful to groups of people who need to make decisions independently that are going to move a whole group of people or a whole organization forward. So that is why, as organizations, we need to focus on principles rather than beliefs. And we can do that by just calling principles principles, beliefs beliefs, and eliminating core values for our organization. I'd love to know quickly, just put a yes or a 1 in the chat, if you have written core values for your organization. 1 or yes if you have them, 2 or a no if you do not have written core values. Working on them, write some yeses, some nos. Obviously, there's no wrong answer here, but if you do have them following this training, what I want you to do is pull them out and check each one to see if it's a principle or if it's a belief, or if it's nudging one way or the other, nudge it towards a principle or nudge it into the belief column here. So let's just take a look at some examples of belief. And I'll highlight, right, I said I was going to highlight racism throughout this, right? Racism is bad. There's a lot more beautiful ways we could say this, use more words, but, you know, this sums up for me. I would tend to use the word racism is destructive, or that's how I would, that's my belief. Racism doesn't help us move forward. Racism hurts many people. Those are beliefs. Some other beliefs, it's our duty to help the poor. This is Robin Hood's belief. It's our duty to help the poor. Miracles can happen. Some people have this belief. There's always a better way. This happens to be the core belief that drives PivotGround, my business, forward. All people are created equal. So I'd love for you to just pop a belief that you hold or your organization holds into the chat if you're willing to share. And beliefs are great, but they don't help us take too many steps forward. So I encourage organizations to have 1 or 2 core beliefs that they really need everybody to buy into and really form the basis of why your mission is even relevant. So I'll give you a moment to think of a belief, but I'll share with you. All patients deserve excellence in care. Yes. If anyone else wants to get out there and share their belief. Beliefs often can't be proven right or wrong. So there's no right or wrong answer to a belief. You either believe it to be true or you don't. Everyone deserves a safe home. All students are entitled to equal education. Great, excellent examples of beliefs. So let's move on to some principles. And you can probably generate a number of principles related to any belief. Everyone deserves a decent, affordable place to live. Yes. So principles. And here's Robin Hood example, right? Robin Hood believes, you know, it's important to help the poor. But his principle is it's okay to steal from the rich to give to the poor. Other people might not have that principle. They might say stealing is wrong and we're not going to steal. We're always going to find some other way of solving our problems. Another guiding principle, no one gets left behind. And I'd love for you, if you can think of, if you have a core value that's a principle already, or if you just have a personal principle or a business principle that you think is there, even if you haven't written it down, please feel free to share it in the chat. This is a principle, I don't think it's in our core guiding principles at PivotGround, but this is one of my principles. We don't rush, because rushing leads to mistakes. And so we make a lot of decisions. Should we do this? They're like, oh, we'd be rushing if we did that. We just choose not to rush. And I think what's so great about principles is there's something, sometimes you can prove them to be true or not, but basically a great guiding principle for your organization is a choice. You just say, we're going to choose to act in this way. We take the time to listen. That's a choice that you're going to do that. Another guiding principle I've heard from another business, we carry our own bag, or another way to say everyone's going to carry an equal share of the weight. Great. We give a hand up. Core values. Yeah, expand. Compassionate care, accountability, integrity, respect, excellent service. So to me, those are core values that are kind of like towards the belief end a little bit, and we want to nudge them towards guiding principles. And if anybody's interested, I have been thinking about doing an extended workshop on how to build these guiding principles and enact them in your organization. And specifically, if you're thinking about racism right now and want to enshrine that and those actions in your organization, let me know in a chat or send me a message later saying that you'd be interested. So now I want to show you, these are PivotGrounds. These are our actual guiding principles. We've been working on them for a couple years, so they're pretty refined, and there's always room for improvement. In fact, when I built them into this slide, it's going to load so we can all see it clearly. I saw an improvement related to racism. We actually have a number of guiding principles that help safeguard against racism and push us to act against racism. So one of our guiding principles, and you'll see the way we add more information and clarity, is we have the primary guiding principle, and then we've just put in bullet points a few guidelines of how, how we really fulfill that guiding principle. It takes us a few steps further. So, and you are welcome to have any of these of their own. It's not bad for two organizations to have the same guiding principles. So if I have captured something and it's true for your organization, by all means, you're welcome to plagiarize. Transparency and collaboration are the cornerstones of our success. Transparency, especially having a solid principle of choosing to be transparent, can help you overcome many things about being uncomfortable about racism. And one of the most important pieces of that is being vulnerable. Brene Brown does a fantastic job of talking about vulnerability. Vulnerability is good for business because it helps us identify our challenges in a proactive way. And when we're proactive about our challenges or issues, there actually become opportunities. Whereas when we are in a reactive state, our challenges are always problems and rarely opportunities. So that's a great area where you can add things about racism. Identify the root of the problem before you take action. This is a big one for us, and I've leaned on this many, many times. I've said, well, someone's coming to us, they're all anxious, they're worried, a nonprofit doesn't have enough money, but often that is not the root of the problem. And we use this again and again to say, wait a second, I'm not gonna get hung up in all of the symptoms that are going on. I'm gonna stay focused on what's really going on here. And sometimes racism is at the heart of that problem. So if you're used to being vulnerable and you're used to digging in to the heart of a problem, you have greater opportunity to uncover what racism really looks like in your organization. And it's there, I promise you. I have not met a human being in this country or probably ever in the world who was a grown-up. I've certainly met kids who didn't have racist things in them, but we are all surrounded. We live in a racist culture. We live in a racist world. We are all racist. but we can choose to try not to be racist. That is the important thing, is that we try to be anti-racist, which I think is a fantastic term to describe what we're trying to do. Creating clear finishes. This one is really helpful to us. There isn't really much that defies racism or that's anti-racist there. This one, makes space for everyone to be heard and valued. And one of the things I've just intentionally put in, we make anti-racist choices. So for us sitting around, are we going to stay quiet when everyone else is speaking up? No, we're going to do something as well, because that's the anti-racist choice. So we've ingrained a really proactive principle that's part of a large principle that guides us in many ways. And this is an area where I actually saw improvement today. This is make space for everyone to be heard and valued. And I think it would be that much clearer if it said make space for anyone to be heard and valued. Because one of the big things about racism and other forms of prejudice is when we apply some sort of reaction that we're having to a whole large group of people, that we start creating systemic racism. And so if we can, remember to not apply racist ideas and really take individuals and not bring the baggage of our culture to the table, that can go a long way. Take action, learn, and refine. This helps us in so many areas of our business and making choices. And it's true right now. If we can embrace them, if we can take some action, embrace that dealing with race is just uncomfortable for everybody, especially uncomfortable, painful for people who are experiencing the negative end of it, but it is an uncomfortable thing. It's a difficult thing for everybody to talk about. But if we're committed, like we are at PivotGround, to taking action, knowing that we're going to make mistakes and learning from them and refining them, we can feel less afraid to put it out there, because it's okay to make a mistake in our culture at PivotGround. And we've embedded that in our I like to think of guiding principles as rules of the road. They guide us, they tell us where we can go and where we can't go. So I hope that has given you something to work on, something to chew on. If you'd love to have a conversation with me one-on-one, I encourage you to apply for a call at pivotground.com/apply.